Appreciate it. I'm sorry if I overstepped you. So you will take the first question first.
Sure.
What do you see as the single most important issue facing your district, and what is your plan to address the issue?
There's so many districts, so many issues throughout the district and our state. I think the number one issue right now is legislation that just passed this current legislative session to allow private charter schools into Kentucky. It's going to take money away, funding away from public schools and our teachers. And we need as much of that as we can in our public school system here in Lexington and throughout the state. So I think right now that is the number one issue that we need to be focusing on, is keeping public education public and keeping funding there for our teachers and our schools.
Thank you so much. Mr. Aull, the question is, what do you see as the single most important issue facing your district, and what are your plans to address the issue?
Actually, I agree with Justin on this one. I think the charter school piece of legislation is the most important issue that's facing not only our district, but the entire Commonwealth of Kentucky. And we have to think about how it impacts the entire Commonwealth, not just us here. You know, we have friends and families that live across the district, that live across county lines. And in a lot of these areas, the county school system is the largest employer in that entire county. And, you know, Fayette County Public Schools is also a large employer here. And I don't have a problem with people sending their kids to private school. That's fine. If you choose to use your own money to send folks to private school, that's okay. But there's no logical reason for us to use taxpayer money to fund out-of-state for-profit institutions. So I think the rolling back the charter school bill, supporting Governor Beshear, vetoing that piece of legislation, and trying to find one or two more legislators to not override that veto is the most pressing issue we have today as a Commonwealth.
Thank you so much. And you'll take this question first. We'll do a follow-up education question since both of you are feeling strongly. Libraries are typically stocked by degreed librarians. What role do you see the legislature playing in book selection for libraries?
Less. I think there's legislation in Frankfurt right now to take away local control of the library boards. I'm 100% against that. You know, people that went to school to become librarians, or if they have a degree in that, they're much more educated and have the background. They're the people that ought to be making those choices. It ought to be left up to the local community and the local library boards on the type of materials they need and the books, you know. And when we start selecting and choosing the types of history that our local schools and libraries can afford to teach our our kids, it's very, very dangerous. You know, if we don't learn about history, we're inclined to repeat it. So I think it's a lot less of Frankfurt's role to be doing what they're doing in the library space.
Thank you so much. Mr. Bramhall, same question. Libraries are typically stocked by degreed librarians. What role do you see the legislature playing in book selection for libraries?
Yeah, and books in libraries at school should be chosen by librarians and the teachers and our community school boards. The bill that Chad referred to puts the power into local county judge executives to make that decision. That's not where the power should be. It should be with our teachers and our school systems to decide what books are going to be in the libraries at schools.
Thank you. You'll take this question first. How do you see Kentucky moving forward to address climate change?
You know, there's a number of steps that can be taken. One, we have to start putting money into the issue. We're not doing that here in Kentucky. The number one way we can do it is to get clean energy started, get going. There's been a number of companies that have started doing that with solar power, and I think that's the way to go. We need to provide investment tools for companies to come into our state to provide those businesses, and maybe give a financial incentive for training for folks in Eastern Kentucky to start making the transfer from coal power to solar power in those Eastern Kentucky counties to bring jobs back to those communities as well.
Thank you so much. Mr. Aull.
Yeah, I don't think we see Frankfurt doing much of anything on this front. It's an issue that they've really completely ignored up until this point. And I think we have a unique opportunity in Kentucky. We have the second most amount of streams in America behind Alaska. So on top of solar, we need to really try to have a concerted effort with both water and wind power. We have to diversify when it comes to the energy sector in total. You know, there's not going to be a silver bullet where one thing fixes it all. We have to try to get as many different components of the energy portfolio as we can, which includes wind, solar, and water, to better meet those needs. You know, there's TIF legislation for economic development in certain areas, like downtown Louisville has a TIF, and there's other TIFs around the state. I know there's one in Moorhead. We need to think about some kind of economic financial incentives like a TIF for these depressed economic areas that used to produce coal, to look at wind, solar, water, energy producing. That way we can diversify our portfolio in the energy sector.
Thank you. You will take this question first. The legislature enacted a law to end the COVID emergency immediately, which Governor Beshear says will cost Kentucky $50 million in federal funds for food stamps. Do you think ending his emergency powers immediately was worth depriving the poor of food assistance?
No. N-O exclamation, exclamation, period, dot, exclamation. No, my wife works in that space. She's over the food nutrition education program, actually administers those federal dollars. And it's horrible, I think, what the legislature has done in this place. You know, it's just putting more red tape and barrier up against the folks who need the help and assistance the most. You know, people in that situation, they usually are in that situation because they've already got other significant challenges in their life. I think it's mean. I think it's mean-spirited. I don't think there's any need for it, and it's unnecessary. We need to be focusing on fixing the problem, not exaggerating the problem. We need to be focusing on food deserts and trying to solve those, rather than putting more barriers to folks to get food that they need for their everyday life. You know, we want a well-educated, engaged workforce. If people are hungry, they can't do that.
Thank you. Mr. Bramhall.
You know, this might turn out to be a really boring debate because it seems like Chad and I are agreeing just about on everything. And so I agree with him on this. It's absolutely the wrong thing to do at the wrong time. We've got to provide for our own people, and food is one of the most important things that a person needs, a family needs. And it's not the right thing to do. Simply just isn't. You know, another thing that they did in Frankfurt was they cut unemployment benefits. So you're going to be hitting people double as hard in the same period of time. It's the wrong thing to do. We need to be better than that. And I know Kentucky has it in them. We can do it. We can do the right thing. We just have to get the right people elected and start making the right difference.
Thank you. You will take this question first.
Okay.
And it kind of parallels a little, I guess. With the recent pandemic, government was called upon to institute mask mandates and business closures to halt the overwhelm of our healthcare system. The legislature has limited the governor's ability to respond to such a public health crisis. Do you think that the legislature has mechanisms in place to address a future pandemic quickly?
No, you know, they took the power away from the chief executive officer in our state. And it wasn't the right move to make. They wanted the power and they had the ability to take it away. But if something major comes about again in the future, whether it's short term or long term, it's going to take a lot of people to get together very quickly to make some decisions. Now, the governor does have long term ability to make those decisions still, but it's very short term before the legislature has to intervene according to the legislation that they passed to give themselves more power. Again, it was the wrong decision. It's our governor's choice, whether that governor is a Democrat or a Republican. it should be in the hands of the governor.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Aull, can you answer that question, please?
Yes, ma'am. So I think it's dangerous and irresponsible. And here's why. You know, the legislature is a part-time position. They're only up in Frankfurt for certain times of the year. The governor is elected by every person in the Commonwealth. And that way, every person has a piece of that representation by the governor, not by the individual legislator. And so it is the governor's responsibility, per the Constitution, to handle emergencies and crisis, not the legislature. Now, the legislature is trying to give themselves their own ability to call themselves in a special session, which I'm also against, because our Constitution dictates that the legislature is a part-time role, not a full-time role. The governor is the full-time, duly elected constitutional executive authority of the Commonwealth, and he should have that ability to do what fit. And Justin's right, whether it's a Democrat or Republican that was elected statewide by the people of Kentucky, that person should have that power, period.
Thank you very much. You'll take this question first. What do you consider the greatest challenges to the justice system, and how would you like to correct it? Big question.
I'm gonna go with two and try to squeeze them both in real quick. I think the cash bail system is irreprehensible. You shouldn't be mandated to jail based on your economic standing in life. If you Kentucky should go the way of other states. Other states have reformed their entire bail system where they go with like a points system on how likely you are to commit another act while you're awaiting trial. You should not sit in a jail cell because I thought we were as a society innocent until proven guilty, just based upon your economic well-being. So reforming the cash bail system, actually getting rid of it altogether, that's issue number one. And then issue number two is the systemic, injustice with people of color that are overly targeted and incarcerated in our system in America. We have too many people that are in jail for things they should have never been in jail from minor traffic violations to marijuana, to a number of other systems. And unfortunately, that has disproportionately affected our people of color in the country.
Thank you. Mr. Bramhall.
Kentucky has the third highest incarceration rate in the entire country. And what Chad just said is right. There's there's way too many folks incarcerated in Kentucky for minor offenses. One of the things that I want to do as the next state representative is legalize and decriminalize marijuana. Now, I don't use marijuana, but I see the financial benefits for our state. We can generate a revenue of approximately $220 million a year from legalizing and decriminalizing marijuana. It will get people out of jail. It will help clean up the records of thousands and thousands and thousands of people throughout our state. Help get those folks into good paying jobs. And our state can have the revenue to put into public schools, public teachers, and even to do something like send young people to community college for 2 years for free without a tuition, which will free up and help them out with the burden of those student loans. So I think that's probably the most important thing that we can do to change things in our criminal justice system.
Thank you so much. Next question you will go ahead and take first. In Kentucky, more than 65% of gun deaths are suicides. A Kentuckian dies by suicide every 17 to 18 hours. Farmers and veterans have especially elevated suicide rates. Would you support allowing law enforcement with a court order to take emergency custody of an individual's firearms temporarily when there is evidence that the person is in a danger to himself or to others?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That's one thing that is missing, again, from our justice system in Kentucky. I worked for a family court judge for a couple of years. And one of the things that I think needed to be immediate that I thought was missing from our domestic violence system was after someone was found guilty of domestic violence and a restraining order put against them, an EPO, the person, unless the victim specifically requested that those firearms be removed from that person, they weren't. They were kept in their hands, whether they were a threat to that person or to themselves. And we have to take steps to make firearm safety an important topic. He was my best friend, and my former partner was killed at the hands of someone that had a gun. Shot Nick. He was a medical student, a resident, and then took their own life. And if Nick had the ability to, he would have reported that person as being a concern, and those firearms would have been taken away. So we have to take steps to take urgent action because it's an important issue, and we're having approximately 2,000 people commit suicide each year here in Kentucky, and a lot of that can be prevented. We just have to take the right steps.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Aull, suicide question. What is your thought as far as having a court order and allowing law enforcement to temporarily take away firearms if they are deemed a harm to themselves or others?
Yes is the short answer. The longer answer is I don't think it necessarily has to be temporary. You know, we've got some of the most lax gun laws in America right here in the Commonwealth. You see people carrying AR-50, 15s and 47s into the Capitol and displaying them like a lanyard. I mean, it's not safe. It's not common sense. I grew up on a farm. I went rabbit, squirrel, deer hunting. If you need an AR-15 to go take out a deer, you need to find another hobby. You're not very good at it. There's no logical reason you need that type of weapon. I don't have a problem with people having a shotgun or whatnot, but there's no reason that somebody ought to be able to walk into a movie theater with a 100-round drum and take out 50 people in a matter of seconds. It's just irresponsible, and it's not loving your neighbor as yourself. It's not safe. There's many things in the mental health space that we can do. We need more mental health counselors in school. We need more legislation in Frankfurt that helps mental health and not attacks it. The transgender high school not letting ladies play on the type of team that they wanted to play for in high school, that's not helping with mental health. It's exacerbating the situation even further. So we need legislation and legislators who support mental health legislation and not make it worse.
Thank you. Thank you. Heading back towards education for a moment, early childhood was largely left out of funding this session. Tell us your thoughts on the importance of early childhood education. And Mr. Aull, you'll have that question first.
Yeah, I think the final version of the budget did fully fund kindergarten for the first time ever, which was a step in the right direction. It's a step. We're not done. I fully supported Governor Beshear's request to fully fund pre-K 4-year-old. I'd go a step further. Some states have fully funded pre-K 4 and 3-year-olds. I think that's where we need to be. Kentucky has made tremendous strides since the Kentucky Education Reform Act in 1990, and we don't have to say thank God for Mississippi anymore. We've gone from next to last to firmly in the middle of the pack, but we cannot rest on our laurels. We've got to do more to continue to push that forward, and early education opportunities, including fully funding pre-K 4 and 3-year-old, is the next step in that process. If we want to compete with everybody else, not just in the country, but on a global economic financial footing, that's where it is. We have to do that for our kids, not for us, but for the future of our Commonwealth.
Thank you. Mr. Bramhall, thoughts on early childhood education and its importance?
Yeah, Kentucky had more people retire in the Great Retirement the last year than any other state in our nation. We've got to get, I'm right with Chad, we got to get 3- and 4-year-olds covered in early childhood education. That way parents can get back to work. we can get them to work to replace the jobs of everyone that retired. We need the workers in the workforce. Problem is, with private charter schools coming in and a lot of public funding going to those charter schools, we're not going to have the money to send 3 and 4-year-olds to preschool. And I don't know where we're going to get the funding. So we're going to have to get some folks in there that can make some changes. And it's going to have to be fast, because after that money is gone into the public charter schools or the private charter schools, public schools are really going to be hurting for those funds.
Thank you. Next question is about elections. What is your opinion of the voter legislation that passed recently in Kentucky? And do you think that it best serves the voters of Kentucky?
No, I think it was a step backwards when we should be taking a step forwards. We gotta have, we need to have, it's a necessity to start having early voting being a thing where it's permanent. We need to have easier accessibility. We need to have the polls open the weekend leading up to the election. It needs to be easier for people to vote, not harder.
Thank you. Mr. Aull, your opinion on voter legislation?
What they did was bad. What we need to do is more. So other states like Oregon, they mass mail out their ballots 3 weeks before the election to every registered voter in their entire state. Because of this, they have 92% voter participation every year. There's no reason we can't do that. It's best for the person. It's best for the owner. It's best for people who are disabled that have a hard time getting out of their house. The ballot is mailed right to their house and they fill it out, mail it back in. No voter fraud, no investigations, year after year after year, just great participation in their democracy. That's what we should do. Now, if we can't do that, there's no reason why we can't do longer early voting. We've got 3 days at Commonwealth Stadium coming up. That's good. It's not enough. Why do we not have drop boxes? Why can we not do it for a couple of weeks? Why can we not do it on the weekends? We've got to make it easier for people to vote, not harder. And 8:30 to 4:30, 3 days before the election, is not enough.
Thank you so much. And this will be the final question. Mr. Aull, you'll take it first. What should voters know about you that they could not necessarily glean from your website or social media? And what makes you the best candidate for this position?
Well, let's see. What can they not get from my website? I'm going to say, fun fact, my COVID hobby is karate. My daughter and I watched the entire first season of Cobra Kai. We binged it over a weekend and she loved it. And at the end of it, I said, instead of watching it, we could live it. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, we can do this. And so about 1.5 years ago, my daughter and I started taking karate lessons, and we've been doing it ever since. And we're studying for our green belt. So that's one fun fact that you couldn't get from my website, that we do karate. My daughter and I do karate together. As far as why I'm the best candidate, I think I'm going to let each individual person judge, my website and Justin's website and what we've said here today. You've heard that we agree on a lot of issues, and that's great. Lexington needs a progressive, honest, hardworking legislator in Frankfort, and that's what I pledge I will be if I have the opportunity to serve the constituents of the 79th District.
Thank you. Mr. Bramhall, what
should
voters know about you?
I've known Chad for a very long time, about 20 years or so, and I didn't know he did karate. So I'm kind of glad this debate happened on Zoom and not in person, in case he got mad at me. The one thing I would say that I probably isn't on my website is I've been a carpenter for the last several years, and I can build a house and do just about any type of renovation to it. Now, if my car broke down, I got to call AAA. I have it towed somewhere. I can't fix the car, but I can build a house. In terms of why I'm the better candidate, Chad and I have very similar backgrounds. We both worked in government for a long time for different candidates, and we're probably both decent candidates compared to where folks end up landing in different counties and districts across the state. I think Chad said it. We're going to leave it to the voters to decide. We're both very similar in nature, and and what we believe. Again, I want to thank you guys for hosting this debate, the league, and thank you to the viewers for watching. And I hope you were able to get a feel for what the candidates, which each of us believe in and stand for.
That's a great segue into our closing remarks. And so you have an additional 60 seconds to be able to let
I'm sorry, I thought that was part of the closing remarks.
No,
Chad,
that
did
was
you
just
think
the last
same thing?
question. And so you get 60 more seconds.
Well, geez, goodness. So again, I'll say I'm the only candidate from Lexington, and I have Lexington's progressive values. I again believe we should legalize and decriminalize marijuana to generate revenue to invest into our teachers and our public schools, to do things like provide 2 years of community college to help erase student debt. I stand with Governor Beshear and think we ought to decrease the state sales tax, and that now is not the time to raise state sales tax or local sales tax. And I also will bring more diversity to the legislature. I work hard to represent minorities, women, people of color, the LGBTQ community throughout our Commonwealth. Please take a minute to learn more about me and visit my website at justinbramhall.com, and I would be honored to have your vote on May 17th.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Aull, you get the final words.
Thank you, Justin, for participating. It takes a lot of courage for anyone to put their name on the ballot. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight, this evening, whenever you may be watching it at home. To the viewers, I just want to say this. I think that the folks in this district, in most districts across the Commonwealth, want somebody to represent them that they can be proud of, that they think is honest and that has integrity and will keep their constituents' interest at heart when they're choosing how they're going to vote on legislation, what legislation they choose to sponsor. I think that if we live by the tenet of love your neighbor as yourself, we would be in a much better position in society. And so that's what I pledge to the voters, that I will love my neighbor as myself, and that I will do what I think is right for the citizens of this district. I'm proud to have Representative Susan Westrom's endorsement as well as Senator Thomas's, and I'd be honored to have your vote.
Well, thank you very much. And thank both of you for participating today and for stepping up and running for office. That is really, really important in this day and age. If you are interested in League membership, please do check out our website at lwvlexington.com. And while you're there, these candidate forums will be listed there under the candidate forum tab. Please be sure to vote on May 17th, and you can look for additional information about the candidates on the website vote411.org. And thank you so very much for joining us and taking the time to view this recording.